the extent of how far Joe carried his kindness. It amazes me to this day because he was such a kind person. He would always give you a positive, you know, very seldom a negative. I don't even hardly remember ever seeing him be negative in hardly any ways, you know. But I would always go to see him to discuss music, and because I knew that he knew so much about music. So he would always give me good direction. He would tell me about people. At that time, when I was younger, when I first met him, I didn't really um, know some of the guys he was telling me about. And then so he would either give me instructions on how to get information on them, or he would give me an album or something that these guys had made. He would make me be aware of what was out there. And a lot of those people I found out later on, he knew them. And he would never tell me that he knew these people. He would just mention their names, and then that would stick in my mind, and then I would go investigate them, which turned out to be a blessing for me because it's like you're going down a pathway, not knowing exactly which way you're going, but then somebody's telling you, well, you need to go this way, or you need to look at this, and so that's what I would do. So later on, as time went by, I realized that he was letting me get to these places faster by him giving me information. So I wouldn't, he had the Black Academy of Music, and I wouldn't go there to play in the band, I would go there to talk to him. And that was just my approach to Joe, because a lot of people would go there to take the classes in music, but I just like going and talking to him face to face. And so he would always say, oh, so you came to check me out? And I'd always say, yeah, I came to see you. And then we just started talking about music, different things. So I'm very appreciative of that.
Awesome. Yeah. Someone mentioned to me about a Seattle sound. Does that phrase or term sound familiar to you gentlemen?
Seattle is when Joe came. Seattle wasn't so much. It had a little bit of jazz to it, but Seattle, the sound of Seattle, there was a lot of soul. Seattle, Tacoma, the whole area had a lot of like soul, heart, and most people that would see Seattle players back when I was growing up, they knew something was very unusual. It was a stronger sound, gutsy, soulful, but Seattle's always had a certain sound. But when Joe came, to me, he elevated the jazz. He more emphasized the jazz, more so than just the rhythm and blues or the soul sound. But Seattle's been known for a soul sound or a jazz, not jazz so much, but Joe came at the right time for the jazz to help people get more into the jazz. So the area, Seattle, the whole area, Seattle, Tacoma area, always had some great musicians. Joe just came and put more of a jazzier influence on it. And he knew a lot of great jazz musicians, which in my case, I was playing more of the soul, Seattle sound, but I've always wanted to learn some of the jazz material too. So, Joe he came at the right time, if you ask me, because a lot of people learned the jazz influence from being around Joe Brazil.
There's also a theory out about how Uncle Joe's influence, and possibly here by bringing those different world-renowned acts here and through the university and through BAM, exposing a lot of you to the originals and the greats from, say, the Midwest, East Coast, down South, Chitlin Circuit and all that, and bring them here, and you all having that hands-on, face-to-face with these people, and maybe perhaps the Seattle sound, then there was like almost a transitional or transformative time in the jazz scene, and a couple people I know are theorizing that Uncle Joe's influence did that, like bringing Coltrane here where he recorded Ohm, and some of the the like maybe coming here to Seattle and being able to go to the beach or some different scenery or whatever it was
Yeah.
that allowed them to start infiltrating, and it was kind of like I don't know if it was a more of a from the bebop to the ragtime
Well, the,
jazz sound to a more
well,
smoother something.
the personal thing, that's what made Joe unique too, because he knew these people, and he would bring them, and you would get a chance to really meet them. And like Joe he brought McCoy Tyner to his house where I met McCoy, and I told Joe that I had a feeling I was going to meet McCoy. I didn't know why, but it did happen. And Joe said, well, if you want to meet him, you know, you can meet him here. And so, sure enough, I went to Joe's house, and McCoy Tyner sitting there talking to me, who at that time was my favorite piano player, still is to this day. And I got a chance to talk to him. I went down to a jazz alley a few times and places where McCoy was playing. I would talk to McCoy Tyner because McCoy knew Joe. And so if I said, this is funny to me because one day I went down to see him, and I went backstage and to a room where the musicians, McCoy's musicians, they were there taking a break. And the guy opened the door when I knocked, and he gave me this really kind of a hard look. And he said, yeah, what do you want? And he, kind of a mean look. And I said, well, I came here, and I'm a friend of Joe Brazil's. And when I said that, McCoy Tyner heard Joe Brazil, and he said, hey, let him in. And so I went over and started talking to McCoy. And later on, I talked to Joe about that, and Joe told me, he said, Shazam! See, say my name, and doors open. And Joe was joking with me, but that's the way Joe Brazil was. If you say Joe Brazil to somebody who was a great jazz musician, most of these great musicians knew him. And so, when I mentioned Joe Brazil down at Jazz Alley, those guys, they opened the door, and I walked in and just started talking to McCoy. And he asked about Joe, and I was, at that time I didn't have Joe's phone number. I didn't have my book that had Joe's phone number, so I told McCoy I didn't have his number with me. But, McCoy said, call him up. And I said, well, I don't have his number in my phone, and I left my book at home. But Joe had that type of influence on everybody, and I think that all started in Detroit when Joe used to have all these great musicians play at his house.
Yeah. That was during the time many of them, they could come play, but they didn't have nowhere to stay when they got done playing. So Uncle Joe had basically a nightclub after hours in his own home where many people came and did jam sessions. So did the same thing kind of happen for you, Mr. Harris? What was your experiences? Any working with him, or you said you took classes at BAM?
Yeah, I took BAM, which is the acronym for Black Academy of Music. I taught at his school.
Okay.
I taught drums at his school, and I'm pretty sure I didn't know Joe as well as Dennis knew him. That's for sure. But I must say he was like a jazz purist. When I went to Western Washington State College, which I got there on a boys' scholarship, but I still had such a passion for playing drums. And so at the time I was learning how to play, I thought I was learning how to play jazz at the college, which, you can never learn jazz from a class. You have to live the life. You can't learn it in a classroom. That's one thing I learned about it. But there I was, at that time, I really thought I was learning how to play jazz. But once I left Western and I moved back down to the University of Washington, that's when I really got to see how jazz was played. Because jazz you have to live it. You can't learn it from class. You can't learn. I also studied at Stan Kenton's jazz clinic in San Francisco. And again, I was trying to learn jazz from school, and you can't learn it from school. It's a life you have to live. That's what I learned about it. And I was actually from the fusion era, right after jazz.
Yes,
You
I
know.
think that's what I'm talking about. How
Black people haven't seen black people
Hey, how you doing?
they're acting fool up there in LA like a crazy person.
Wow, how are you doing?